For years, Rasheeda Frost has supported Kirk through cheating scandals, secret babies, and public humiliation. However, at 48, she is finally speaking out about Kirk's affairs. And believe me, it will shake love and hip-hop fans to their core. Was her loyalty genuine, or was it all a lie? Rasheeda Frost has long been praised as the ride-or-die wife of Love and Hip Hop Atlanta. The woman who stood tall amid betrayal, heartbreak, and headline-making scandals involving her husband, Kirk Frost. Over the years, fans watched in shock as Rasheeda publicly forgave Kirk for everything, from extramarital affairs to an alleged secret child. All while maintaining her family and business empire, something has changed. In a recent interview that went viral, Rasheeda finally pulled back the curtain, sharing her true thoughts about the past, the truth behind the rumors, and the reasons behind her prolonged silence. What she revealed is more shocking and raw than anyone could have imagined. In today's video, we're delving deeply into Rasheeda's stunning revelations. What actually transpired behind the scenes of Kirk's infidelity, and how Rasheeda felt. We have verified details, interview footage, and timeline breakdowns that finally paint the whole picture of this emotional unraveling of one of reality TV's most dramatic marriages. Why is she speaking out now after all these years? Because when Love and Hip Hop Atlanta first premiered in 2012, Rasheeda and Kirk were already fan favorites known for their hustle, family values, and what seemed to be a solid marriage. But just one season later, that when Kirk publicly questioned the paternity of Rasheeda's pregnancy during season 2, one of the most explosive and uncomfortable scenes in reality TV history occurred. The cameras captured every moment behind the scenes, and Rasheeda later admitted that she was taken by surprise when she first learned she was pregnant, and that instead of receiving love and support, she was met with suspicion on national television. Viewers were shocked by this. As Rasheeda recently revealed, Kirk had already been acting distant, questioning her whereabouts, becoming paranoid, and accusing her of things that in retrospect felt more like projection than genuine concern. This wasn't just a reality show plot, it was the beginning of a painful public humiliation that Rasheeda says she never fully processed until now. Was this a scripted stunt for ratings? Or was this the beginning of the breakdown of a very real marriage? I was pregnant and emotional, and suddenly I was fighting for my reputation on camera. I didn't sign up for this. I was fighting for my baby and my dignity. That betrayal, Kirk's public denial of her, sowed the seeds of doubt in the public's mind, leaving Rasheeda to clean up the emotional fallout. She continued filming, staying with Kirk, and remaining silent. But behind closed doors, everything was falling apart. If season 2 sowed the seeds of doubt, then season 3 poured gasoline on the fire. Let's go back to one of the most notorious moments in Love and Hip Hop. At a boys' trip to a remote cabin in the woods, which was supposed to be innocent and low-key, Kirk Frost was caught on camera partying with several women while drinking heavily and eventually becoming too close to one woman in particular. The footage was damning, shirtless, drunk, and clearly flirting. But it didn't end there. This trip would lead to explosive rumors of Kirk cheating again, this time not just emotionally, but physically. In Atlanta history, the cabin trip wasn't just a storyline. Rumors started to circulate that he had slept with a woman named Jasmine Washington, and shortly after, Jasmine came forward and claimed she was expecting Kirk's child. In shock over his on-camera betrayal in the previous season, she now had to deal with a public scandal involving another woman and a baby, and this time it was unavoidable. Jasmine's claims included screenshots of timelines and, later, a baby boy named Cannon, who she claimed was Kirk's son. At first, Kirk denied it, claiming the timeline didn't add up, claiming that Jasmine was pursuing him once more. Confession really hits home. In an exclusive interview she did on a podcast earlier this year, Rasheeda acknowledged that she had already suspected Kirk of cheating at the time. But what first nightmare. But in front of millions of people, I didn't even have time to cry before the headlines rolling in. She continued by saying that while the cameras showed her trying to stay strong, holding down her children, and running her business, what they didn't show the toll it took on her mental health. She lost weight, had trouble sleeping, and felt betrayed by the world, not just by Kirk for it. Friends called her out, but Rasheeda stayed, saying she did so to protect her family, her sons, and her brand. But she secretly confessed that she was afraid of starting over. Kirk eventually took a DNA test, and the results verified what Jasmine had always claimed. He was the father. While the world was preoccupied with the baby scandal and Kirk's infamous meannesses, the most painful betrayal, according to Rasheeda, wasn't just Kirk's infidelity or the baby. She said that after the camera stopped rolling, she was left to pick up the broken pieces of their marriage and herself. Everyone saw the infidelity, she said, but they didn't see how cold he became afterward. The emotional distance, the silence, and the way I felt invisible in my own home. What almost broke me, according to Rasheeda Kirk, was that he became totally checked out, hardly spoke to her unless the cameras were present, apologized, and worst of all, made her feel like the villain. As if she was overreacting and should just move on for the sake of appearances. She talked about nights of crying herself to sleep, trying to figure out how a man who had once claimed to wonder, was any of it real? In addition to managing several businesses, raising her children, and maintaining her public persona during this time, Rasheeda acknowledged that she was emotionally and physically exhausted and that she had experienced depressive symptoms and even doubted her own value. However, the event that really drove her over the edge was when she discovered a second phone that Kirk had concealed. A phone she was unaware of banned on it. She saw texts with several women that demonstrated that he was still entertaining people after the baby scandal. She admitted that, when I told her I'm done, I wasn't going to keep bleeding for a man who kept cutting me, okay? And that he could do all that knowing I had stayed through the worst of it. That was the last straw. However, the crazy part is that Rasheeda didn't leave. Instead, she moved away from him, stopped talking to him outside of work and co-parenting, and concentrated on quietly rebuilding herself from the inside out. She claimed that during this time, she did something she hadn't done in years. She began going to therapy alone, and she didn't care. Kirk followed her. It was about her healing, not theirs. And therapy changed everything, Rasheeda claimed. That after years of silence, secrets, and emotional walls, she finally began to understand the emotional manipulation she had endured. The pressure to be the strong wife at all costs, and why she felt bad for even considering leaving. Therapy also gave her the strength to set boundaries with Kirk and with herself. Rasheeda believed she had finally created a space to heal privately on her own terms. But suddenly, Kirk did something that shocked her, and not in the usual way. Kirk, who was described as eerily calm but deeply unsettling, sat her down and confessed to her why he did it all. According to Rasheeda, Kirk told her that he never believed in monogamy the way she did, and that for years he had struggled with the idea of being a husband in the traditional sense. He also admitted that even while they were building their empire, having children, and showing up for filming, he had been secretly battling resentment not toward Rasheeda, but toward the role he felt compelled to play. How can I be a one-woman man? I didn't realize it as a child, and I assumed that loyalty meant not being faithful. When Rasheeda heard his truth that he never really felt aligned with monogamy, it broke everything she had been fighting for. She realized that while she was trying to mend their marriage, they weren't even following the same rules. And worse, Kirk, for years she had blamed herself for making him feel emasculated by being more successful. confessed to having several affairs in the early years of their marriage, which Rasheeda was unaware of and probably would not have discovered unless he had come clean. Rasheeda told interviewers that she sat there listening, unable to cry, not because she wasn't hurt, but because the pain had become numb. It was like hearing someone read the last chapter of a book she didn't want to finish, but she was unable to cry. Remain seated. She didn't yell or leave. But she asked him a question that completely altered the dynamic of their relationship. Are you telling me this because you're ready to fight for me? Or are you ready to lose me? This time, Kirk reportedly broke down in tears and disclosed that he had always feared Rasheeda would leave him. And instead of rising to her standards, he self-sabotaged because he didn't feel worthy of the version of love she gave him and was always looking for ways to destroy it. Before it destroyed him, it was a twisted form of insecurity. But for the most shocking part was when Rasheeda revealed that after everything, the cheating, the child, the Lizette, was this confession that hurt the most because it made her realize she had been in love with a version of Kirk that never really existed. I wasn't in love with the man in front of me, she said, but I was in love with the potential of who I wanted him to be. This realization was more than just infidelity. It was about generational trauma, emotional immaturity, and a deep-seated fear of vulnerability, the kind of fear Kirk had never addressed until it was almost too late. Revealed a secret child's emotional abandonment, deceit, and a painful confession that rocked Rasheeda to her foundation. But just when she thought she was ready to move on, perhaps start over, or at least find peace and truth, life gave her another test. It happened on a calm evening at home shortly after Kirk's confession. Rasheeda claimed she had been praying, journaling, and sincerely trying to figure out what her next course of action should be. She wasn't ready to end things, but she couldn't ignore the gut feeling that something wasn't quite right. Her therapist had advised her to trust the silence, and that advice, it turned out to be eerily prophetic that week when Rasheeda discovered a message she wasn't supposed to see. It came from a shared business account where Kirk had unintentionally synced a device. The message was from a different woman, not Jasmine, who they had dealt with publicly, but someone completely new. The tone wasn't flirty, rather, it was intimate. The woman thanked Kirk for supporting her emotionally and mentioned their recent dinner. It was evident from the context that this wasn't just business or a one-time slip. Rather, it was an emotional affair, and for Rasheeda, that was the last straw. In a subsequent statement, Rasheeda stated, "He only needed to keep looking for connections outside of what we built, and that was enough. He no longer needed to sleep with someone in order to break my trust. Are you still searching for something you haven't found in me after all these years?" She asked him gently without shouting, throwing objects, or making a big scene. Unexpectedly, Kirk asserted that the friendship was platonic and a safe place to vent, and that nothing physical had occurred except for Rasheeda. The fact that he still required someone else to process his feelings and that he needed to conceal aspects of himself told her everything she needed to know. This wasn't about infidelity anymore. Rather, it was about alignment. Were they still meant to be together? Or were they merely clinging to the past? What did she do? For the first time in their lengthy and tumultuous relationship, Rasheeda took a break, not the reality TV kind we often hear about, but a real one, moving out of the marital bedroom and into her own private space, focusing entirely on herself and their relationship. Children, forced scenes, no public statements, and a strict boundary. She also stated that if Kirk wanted to rebuild what they had, it would not be through gifts, apologies, or TV redemption arcs, but rather through personal work, therapy, accountability, and consistent intentional actions. Kirk, surprisingly, agreed. In a rare quiet shift, he started seeing a therapist on his own. He stepped back from the spotlight, and for the first time in years, he stopped trying to fix things with money and actually started listening. Rasheeda made it clear that therapy was not a substitute. To get back into her heart was a prerequisite for them to even start living together as partners once more, and only if she witnessed long-lasting change. She called this time in her life the most empowering because it was honest, not because it was easy. I finally stopped performing. I stopped smiling through pain. I allowed myself to feel angry, hurt, and confused. And I didn't rush through it. She even took a break from filming some scenes for Love and Hip Hop to concentrate on her business empire, which included a press boutique and private workshops for mentoring young women. I don't know what the future looks like, Rasheeda recently shared. But I know this: I'm not the same woman who tolerated lies and silence. I'm not afraid to walk away if my peace is threatened, and if we make it, it'll be because neither of us wanted to just act for the cameras. We both decided to do the real work.